Sarah, I thought we were into the dead zone, the Bermuda Triangle of legislation, but apparently there's life in the House and Senate yet.
That's right. We've got the big spending fight coming up, and Republicans are picking what I think could end up being a really interesting battle over the SAVE Act, which is this piece of legislation that's going to be, if House Republicans get their way, tied into a short-term spending bill that would make it even more illegal for undocumented immigrants to vote in elections, create enforcement mechanisms there. That's going to prove polarizing for Democrats who say, that's already illegal. We don't need a law. It's not a problem. But it's a really, really popular measure among all Republicans, the donor class, the centrist Republicans, the conservative Republicans. So I think it could end up being a really interesting battle.
So they want to attach a CR that gets us through to March, right? I think it's spending through March, but attached to it is heightened enforcement and penalties for anyone in the country without invitation and permission, anyone in the country who's not a citizen attempting to vote. Are Democrats really going to vote against that?
Well, it's come up before, and only 5 House Democrats joined with Republicans to vote to pass it. But Republicans do have the votes to get it through the House. What will be really interesting is what would happen in the Senate if Schumer was forced to contend with this, because you have vulnerable Democratic senators like John Tester and like Sherrod Brown who would probably really seriously consider voting for this. It would be uh, an easy political ad for their opponents to cut to say, look, here is a Democratic senator who professes to be a centrist, professes to be standing up for you, and has voted to allow illegal immigrants to vote in our elections. So, because of that, and because this is the CR, so this could be done through reconciliation, they don't need to meet that 60 vote threshold. They would only need 51 votes to pass this. I think Schumer would have a hard time keeping this from going through, and it would just rhetorically, from a messaging standpoint, be really difficult for Democratic leadership to argue against this kind of bill.
I think of Tim Kaine in Virginia should be comfortably ahead. Hung Cow's getting closer. Dave McCormick is tied with Senator Casey. Martin Heinrich is the senator in New Mexico, and Nella Domenici is catching up. We have a new affiliate down there in Clovis, so I want to bring that up. We've got, of course, Sherrod Brown. You mentioned Bernie Moreno's caught him, and I think is going to beat him. It's all across. There are 11 vulnerable Democrats. 11 in Michigan, where an unknown congresswoman is running against Mike Rogers, who's better known than she is. I can't imagine the Michigan senators voting no on this and screwing their own nominated report to replace the senator there.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Schumer would obviously rather not have to have this come to the floor. This is not something that Democrats want to be talking about. They don't want the conversation to be about the fact that between 8 and 10 million illegal immigrants have come into this country under the Biden Harris administration, and that there are not really a lot of safeguards in some of these states to prevent illegal immigrants from voting. You're seeing a really contentious lawsuit play out right now in Arizona over whether proof of citizenship is required to register to vote. And the Biden administration, Democrats are fighting really hard against proof of citizenship requirements for voter registration. So
Can
Republicans are
you
leaning on an
imagine Ruben Gallego voting against this in the House? He's going to have to either miss the vote or vote against it because he's a radical. And if he does, Kerry Lake is going to have that ad running from now until Election Day.
Yeah, it puts Democrats in a really terrible position because this isn't one of those issues where, the country is split 50-50. This is more like a 90-10 issue. Most Americans overwhelmingly support the idea that undocumented immigrants shouldn't vote in elections. They feel the same way about voter ID laws. People should have to show an ID. These are just generally popular ideas beyond the fact that there are some of the few things that can unite the very fractured GOP conference under Speaker Mike Johnson. So I think this is actually a pretty smart fight for Johnson to be picking because it could suggest he has the power to unite his conference after striking out a few times this year on that front.
Now, a quick exit question. Mike Johnson's really surprised me because I didn't know anything about him. He's become a great speaker. And Kevin McCarthy, big shoes to fill. What is Kevin McCarthy's role with the GOP caucus still? Is he still whispering in the ear and giving guidance?
Well, sometimes it seems like he just pops up to be sort of flame the fans of drama. When we saw that at the RNC around some snide comments around Matt Gaetz, but I do think that Kevin McCarthy's done a good job of sort of fading into the background, at least from a public relations standpoint, and letting Mike Johnson take center stage. He's not hovering in the background like Pelosi has, for example, over Hakeem Jeffries. Johnson has all the forward facing trappings of being the real speaker.
I wasn't gonna put words in your mouth, but that is what strikes me. Is McCarthy maybe helping with money and donors, but he's not running the party, and we know it's not Hakeem Jeffries. We know it's Nancy Pelosi.